Hey guys, in this video I'm going to cover a couple things that I think you should know before you go climbing at an indoor gym for the first time. I'm going to start out by explaining one of the things that I consider most important, which is the grading system. And this is used to determine the difficulty of a climb. It starts with VB, which is the easiest climb, and then goes up to V0, which is the second easiest climb that you can see here. And then it goes up to V1, which is this yellow climb that you can see here. And then V2 and V3 and V4 and so on and so forth. Each route is set as one color, but they're not color coordinated by grade. When you're first starting off, you'll probably only be able to do up to a V1 or V2, but even those climbs are still pretty fun. Next, I'm going to talk about the chalking. This is a very common thing done in rock climbing where you use hand chalk to get a better grip on holds, and that way sweat doesn't interfere with what type of handhold you can get. The next thing I'm going to talk about is warm-ups. Something that I like to do when I'm first warming up is just go find a climb that'll be relatively easy for your skill level, and just sort of, as you're going up the wall, go very slowly, controlled motions, and stretch out on certain holds. This way you can sort of warm up your muscles while getting in the right headspace to start climbing. And on your way back down, just make sure you're practicing really good negative control. That'll also help with preventing injury and stuff like that. And once you're done with your warm-up climb, I would just start to go look for something a little bit more challenging. I'm going to quickly go over how you start climbing. You put both your hands on the start holds. Once you get at least 1 foot on the wall, you can start. Now I'm just going to go over a couple important techniques that I think you should know for your first time climbing. The first thing I'm going to go over is something called hand matching. This is where you take both your hands and put them on the same handhold so you can move on to the next handhold and continue moving up the wall. You'll see in a second here that I match both my hands on the top hold when I reach it, and that's because that's how you officially finish a route. You can see that after I match the top hold, I use these gray down climbs to climb down from the wall so that I don't have to jump all the way from the top. These are super helpful because I know that jumping down is a hard thing for a lot of people. And as you can see, this is a V2. The next technique I'm going to go over is something called smearing. And as you can see by my assistant Ben's demonstration here, he is smearing all the way up the wall. Smearing is where you use the friction of your feet against the wall instead of an actual foothold. There are 3 main different types of handholds in climbing. The first, most commonly found in easier climbs, are jugs. The second, which are most commonly found in intermediate climbs, are slopers. And the third kind, which are most commonly found in harder climbs, are crimps. Jugs are typically very deep holds that are easy to grab, slopers are rounded holds that sort of slide your hand off of them, and crimps are really small holds that are hard to get your fingers on, usually requiring a lot of finger strength to grab. There are 2 other main types of holds. One of them is called a pocket, and the other is called a pinch. These types of holds are a little less common, but can be found at pretty much any level in climbing. Jugs, slopers, and crimps can also be found at pretty much any level of climbing, but I put them in the categories that I feel that I see them most in. Here I'm displaying a technique called foot matching. It's pretty much the same thing as hand matching, but just with your feet. This is a technique that I'm sure most people would use without any instruction, but I think it's good to know what it's called so that if someone's explaining how to do something to you, you know what they're saying. Next technique I'm going to cover here is for when a handhold is flipped over upside down. This is called an undercling. You can see me use it here. It's basically an underhanded grasp on a handhold that's flipped upside down. Then after that, you can see me use another example of our hand match right there. And then from there, once again, just climbing over and matching our finish hold. Another thing that I would consider pretty important in climbing is knowing how to fall, since you do it pretty often. Sometimes if you're hanging in an awkward position, you can't really control how you fall that well, but most of the time you can get a pretty good controlled fall where you can land on your feet and then roll onto your back. This is actually the safest way you can fall, where you're least likely to get injured, as displayed here by my friend Benjamin. So as you can see, Ben is unscathed after performing a nice controlled fall onto that thick mat. But just for good measure, let's see if it works twice. The next thing I'm going to cover here are called volumes. Volumes are these big gray pyramid things that you see on the wall, and you can use them pretty much the same way you would the wall by smearing on them, although they are a little bit easier to get a good footing on. It varies from gym to gym, but generally the rule is that if it's not a specific color, then you can use them for any route. If a volume is close enough to be used during your climb, then you can use it. And here's just a closer view on what they look like. The climbing community is pretty friendly, so if you have questions about how anything works, always feel free to reach out to someone nearby, and they'll usually be pretty willing to help. The last technique I'm going to be going over is called a dyno. This stands for dynamic move, and this is where you jump from one hold to another. This can either be used to skip holds or do a move that's set in a route. And finally, I thought I should let you guys know about the waiver that you have to complete before going to pretty much any climbing gym. This is pretty much the same as any waiver you or your parents have filled out to go to any amusement park, and I thought this was relatively important to cover because if you end up winning one of the day passes from the raffle, you will have to complete this waiver with your parent before you go. But yeah, that being said, if you guys have any questions, feel free to come visit me down at the raffle table. I'll be there answering any questions you guys do have, and feel free to come check out some of the prizes, including a few day passes. And yeah, thanks for watching.